Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Super Feeler podcast. My name is Lori, and I'm super excited to be joined by Daniel today, who's going to be talking a lot about his life as a person with borderline, trying to navigate being a university student, doing some super cool work outside of school, and also living with BPD and just kind of, the reality of what it's like to try and navigate all those things at the same time. So, Daniel, super nice to have you. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself generally?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Daniel. I am from Southern California, born and raised from Oxnard. I currently go to school at UC Davis. I am studying political science and psychology, and I'm on a journey, I'm on a little journey of self-discovery. I'm on a little journey where I am in life. I am 21 years of age, and so doing it now it's a good kickstart, I think, into what the future has in store for me. But I'm just here feeling everything and going on in life and seeing where it takes me.
Absolutely. And where has it taken you so far? We were just kind of chatting briefly before about some really cool political stuff you're doing. So tell us about that.
Yeah, well, I just wrapped up an internship on Capitol Hill with the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. Heading back to school, I'm going to graduate in spring, and I just been working every now and then and picking up a few hobbies. I really enjoy fire dancing, felting, listening to music. It's just been, I don't know, I'm just kind of accepting life's gifts, weird gifts too, just kind of living and taking it all in.
Amazing. Yeah, life has a lot of weirdness. And I can't even imagine being in Washington, D.C. these days, just trying to navigate the world and, how things are going. I'm curious, what was stuff like for you growing up? You have a BPD diagnosis now, but when did that happen? Have you always had mental health challenges, all that stuff?
So it's been hectic. It's been really hectic. And when I look back at it, I was just that one kid who was very emotional. I was that one kid who was very reactive, and I was that one kid who was very, I guess, a little different, I guess you could say. It's a very simple term, yet it's so diverse. Um, I didn't really grow up in an environment that was very supporting mentally. As a matter of fact, is pretty much the opposite. They were the ones telling me, like, keep your emotions to yourselves, don't react that way, and so it just made me question, what am I doing wrong? Or is what I'm doing wrong? Is what I'm doing wrong at all? I was very emotional, very impulsive, very reactive. And I got to the point where I decided to hospitalize myself. I checked myself in because I felt unsafe with the way that I was reacting to certain things. And I felt unsafe around others and what I could potentially do to others. And that's what led me to a diagnosis. And ever since then, it kind of helped me because it allowed me to understand what I need to work on. Throughout my whole life, I've been hating on myself, thinking, what's wrong with me? Like, what am I doing wrong? What is it that I need to be doing in order to make myself feel better, in order to make myself work better in my environments? And after that diagnosis, it just kind of helped me narrow down some things I got to work on. And growing up with that kind of experience, just figuring out what's wrong with me and or asking that question every now and then, what's wrong with me? Why am I like this? It's been relatively difficult considering that I didn't really have a support system around me, a support system that wasn't really there to uplift me. And so I kind of had to find that support system within myself, and doing that's been a challenge now, considering that, I'm in college. I am at the doorsteps of life, like it's going to come to me. And
And
so,
you're also moving around, traveling. So any support system that you do have is probably harder to access.
no, yeah, I'm moving around. I'm in DC and I'm jumping straight from California. I was in New York over the weekend, I'm traveling everywhere. I'm going everywhere. And so just trying to find a stable support system that comes with me is just very difficult. But with that, I've learned a lot about what it means to support myself. I learned a lot about what it means to kind of seek support not only from people, but my physical environments, a lot of grounding work. So it's been quite an interesting journey. Painful, but I think with pain comes a lot of lessons, and with a lot of lessons come some great experiences.
Yeah, and a lot of growth, right? I mean, you were
Certainly.
just saying before we started recording that you're 21 and you often hear that like you're so mature for your age or you seem so much older for your age. And like I think that's because we've gone through so much in our lives that like we've
Yeah.
gone through so much shit and it's easy to mature or not easy to mature quickly, but like you don't really have a choice but mature quickly, right? Because you're trying so hard to like find yourself and survive. At least that's my experience.
No, yeah, and I was thinking about that the other day too. It's like, why do I have to feel so much, and why do I have to go through so much in order just to learn so much? I don't know if that's the case, but that's just what's been seared in my mind is that I have to experience the negative in order to, really attract the positive. But I think that's something that everyone kind of struggles with every now and
For sure. Yeah. If only the world wasn't like that, but it's very true. So you're 21 now, and when did you check yourself into the hospital for the first time?
so this is only a couple years ago. This was in 2022 in summer. So I was still in college. It was actually a little before that it was the last time I engaged in self-harm. So I'm about
Mm.
2 years free as of,
Yay.
well, coming up as of the end of this year.
Okay, cool.
So there was a lot of history of, self-harm, self-sabotage, and just a lot of like really bad things like punching the wall, like just out of like really bad anger spites. And then
Hmm.
that's what kind of led me to the hospital. And the fact that I was also in college, the fact that I had to introduce myself to new experiences, it didn't help me either because it was just like too much to handle. And so my kind of best safe route was go to the hospital, check myself in, and see what happens.
Were you treated well there?
I was treated like I didn't exist. My the other patients there, they well, I didn't feel comfortable engaging with them just because I was
Mm.
shy. I'm a shy person at times,
Hmm.
and so I was just sitting there, kind of just waiting for time to pass by, and it just felt like a ghost. I just felt like I was just staring at the wall, just thinking about things, making a couple phone calls, and then it was just there to think to myself. And
Right.
sometimes that's all we need, just an opportunity for us to think and take a deep breath. But for it to get to the extent of me having to do that in a hospital, I think that's an entirely different story.
And how long were you there?
It was just a weekend,
Oh,
luckily.
okay.
So it wasn't anything like prolonged, but still that weekend
Hmm.
felt like 2 weeks.
Yeah, totally. And is that when you got the diagnosis?
That's when I got the diagnosis. Yeah.
And what was that like for you?
Like I said earlier, it wasn't anything like bad. And, it's something that I figured something was wrong with me, or I don't want to say something is wrong with me. I want to say that I was experiencing different um, things. For me to get that diagnosis, it was kind of like a relief because it allowed me to recognize some things that I need to be working on, or at least how I can work on those things. Because with these diagnoses, there's a whole list of specific treatments, there's a list of specific ways in which you can combat these symptoms, or not symptoms, excuse me, that ways in which you can combat these diagnoses. And so, with that list already kind of socially built for me, it kind of just allowed me to figure out, okay, well, here are some things that I can do to work on myself. And that's what I took to heart ever since then.
That's
And I
awesome.
don't like
Yeah.
to, one thing I will say too is that I don't like to say I have BPD. It's rather that I like to identify with the symptoms of BPD, because,
Interesting.
yeah, just because labels are so, well, I guess saying that you don't like labels is such a privilege. I feel like it's a very privileged perspective, but I feel like it's more open, it's more welcoming just to say that I identify with the symptoms of BPD, even with a
Totally.
diagnosis.
Yeah, and you know what? It's just a cluster of symptoms at the end of the day. That's all it
Yeah,
is. So it's just who we are and how we have to navigate the world is I find like personally I find helped by my diagnosis and it sounds like in a way you do too.
yeah, definitely.
Just in terms of like being able to find the right resources, understand kind of what's going on in your head. But there's also so many issues with labels, right? Like it is at the end of the day only as helpful as it is for the person that's receiving that diagnosis. So if you want to identify as, somebody who identifies with the symptoms, then that totally makes sense to me.
Yeah, and the thing about labels too is they're not really designed to, what's the word? Well, they do serve us, but to what extent? they often put us in categories and
Mhm.
boxes, and me, I don't like to feel trapped. And so with labels are just a interesting thing. Jesus, I can't even say anything more than that. Just the world we live in.
Yeah, well, and it's just, it's a pathologized model, right? Like that's kind of the purpose of super feelers and like the super feelers club is like having strong emotions isn't a bad thing, right? Like
Yeah,
it's just harnessing those emotions for good instead of having them like kind of ruin our lives, which it
no,
can happen both ways.
yeah. And it's so hard to feel that way now that I say now that like I've been alive for 50 plus years, but it, it, it feels like I'm not allowed to feel these intense emotions, because I can be so reactionary to things and yet people don't react the same way. And it's like, I feel like I look like a psychopath. I feel like I seem like a lunatic just because I'm reacting a certain way. And so now I can just feel like, well, I've been able to practice putting up a barrier with people. It's like, this is how I react to things. This is me. If you don't like what you see, then you're probably not going to be in my life for a very long time just because, that's how I am. And that's the
Yeah,
truth of
totally.
it.
Yeah, this is me, and if that's not going to work for you, then that's all right. Like we'll just go from
No,
there. Have you
yeah.
found challenges in relationships because of that? Like friendships, family, anything?
All of the above. You know, I would have loved family to be a good support system for me, but no, they weren't. They're kind of I don't want to say the reason that I'm here, but they did what they did for me as a child growing up. A lot of trauma stems from family. So as I grew older, I realized that it's okay to push things out of your life that aren't necessarily serving you. And
Totally.
so in this case, it just happened to be family at this time. That's something that I openly tell them. It's like, you guys aren't really good for me at the moment. So I'm just going to keep distance for now. Something could change in the future, something we can be working on it in the future. But right now, I'm just not ready for that conversation. In terms of romantic and platonic relationships, well, starting with platonic, I find it very hard. I find it very hard to get along with people. And I also find it very hard for me to accept myself around others just because of the way I act and just because of the way I am. I feel very excluded just because I feel very different compared to other people. And so with that, I kind of just harnessed being alone. Pe- People say being a loner is like weird and a bad thing, but me, I love being a loner.
Yeah,
I love to
fair.
take myself on dates. I love to do all these random things. And of course, every now and then it's with like a friend. But in regards to keeping that friend, it's very much a challenge because one day they're my best friend in the world. And then the second day, I'm just not feeling it.
Yeah,
And
totally.
so going from that black and white, it's very difficult. Now, in regards to romantic relationships, that's where I think where most of my symptoms kind of really pop up. That's when I'm starting to
Yeah.
think, oh, damn, like I am not there yet. you know, they've been really difficult. They've been relatively difficult. And so it's hard not to engage in romantic relationships while you're telling yourself that you're just not ready for that. And maybe you need to work on it a little more. Maybe you need to work on yourself a little more. But I also believe that you can heal in relationships. But that's not me saying I'm going to find a relationship so I can heal. That's
Totally.
kind of,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
that is never a good approach. Like relationships are great, but yeah, you got to like be able to be okay on your own, and then being in a relationship is like an added bonus if you want that bonus, right?
Yeah. It's just getting to that point though of when am I going to be, let me see. I was going to say, when am I going to be good enough? But let's
Mm,
add some saving grace there. When am I going to feel comfortable enough
right.
to engage in something like that? So it's just been a very difficult challenge, seeing myself as worthy, seeing myself as comfortable
Hmm.
for these type of interactions and engagements.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess with that, like, what has treatment looked like for you? You got diagnosed 2 and a bit years ago.
Mhm.
You're still, in school and all this stuff, and there's so much going on. But what kind of supports have you explored?
Well, this is my, I think, seventh year of therapy.
Hmm.
So I've been in therapy even before a diagnosis. I've been in therapy ever since middle school, and that included family sessions that did not go well whatsoever.
Yeah.
Jesus. I had a therapist who had ghosted me out of nowhere. I decided to like take a quick break, and then when I tried to get back with her, it was like a complete like
She was just not there.
no, it was just complete ghost, and
Hmm.
it felt really bad. Like
I bet.
if yeah, it's like okay, well, where do I go now? And so I went into like a little crisis and a little spiral, and I went back and forth from school counseling, and now I have a long-term counselor who I'm very happy with, and I'll be reuniting with her once I get back to California. So really, it's just been involved with therapy. I tried a DBT, but I couldn't afford it.
Yeah. Access is a huge issue. Totally.
No,
Yeah.
access is an extreme, crazy issue, especially when you're in college trying to navigate, textbooks, classes, tuition, housing.
Living. Yeah, I
It's
was gonna say. Yeah,
no, yeah,
food.
basic necessities, food, yeah, and it's crazy. But what I did do is I did get the DBT workbook, and I had
Nice.
it for 2 years, and I have not touched it, which I
Been
probably
there.
should. Yeah, like I just have not touched it. I just refuse to work on myself in that aspect.
Hmm.
But besides that, I've been doing a lot of grounding. I've been engaging in a lot of emotional alchemy. I something that I really like to do is meditate, and I do that through a lot of different methods. A lot of what I do is it's a Japanese method. You just go into the forest, just get lost,
Hmm.
just just get lost with yourself. I also do moon bathing. I'm starting to just engage with myself. And something that I recognized lately is I've been having trouble defining what a home is for me.
Hmm.
But what I made home for me is my body, you know? So home is always going to be where I am. And I'm always going to work to feel safe in my own home, my own body. So treatment, it's just been me kind of taking small steps at a time and recognizing my worth and some of my inner demons. And I think the most important part in life, or I think a big step that you can take in life, is recognizing that we're all flawed and maybe giving your demons a hug every now and then.
Hmm.
And so that's what I've been doing, is really letting the demons in and working with them.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach. And my God, are we all flawed? Right? Like,
Jesus, yeah.
diagnosis or not, we're all flawed. I'm super curious. You talked about moonbathing and was it mental alchemy? Can you explain a little bit
Emotional
more about what
alchemy.
those are? Emotional alchemy. Can you talk about what those are?
Yeah. So from my understanding, emotional alchemy is literally just acknowledging that I am the way I am. People often fight that. People often say, oh, I am this, I'm A, I'm B, but I don't want to be that way. So I'm going to ignore it and then let it fester and let it worsen over time, right? Emotional alchemy for me, well, I was having a conversation, well, like a Reddit conversation with, actually was one of my favorite artists. Her name is Chelsea Wolfe. She had replied to a comment that I made, and I asked her if she believed in emotional alchemy. And what she said is, yes, she does. And that how she sees it is just when you're crying, letting yourself cry every now and then. And I think that seems foreign to me, because I grew up in an environment where I'm not allowed to show emotion. I grew up in an environment where if I show emotion, hide it, put it, throw it away, let it fester in the future. I am now in a place in my life where I will allow myself to feel things. If I'm feeling sad, I'm going to let myself feel sad. If I'm feeling angry, I'm going to let myself feel angry. I'm not going to deny that I'm feeling these things. And instead of kind of feeling bad about them, I'm going to take specific aspects of these feelings and I'm going to work with them to see where are they coming from. what can I do to maybe just work with these feelings a little more to see how I can better myself? And that's really what emotional alchemy is just working with your emotions, allowing yourself to feel these things. And in regards to moon bathing, just let yourself be under the moon, the energy from the moon. It could really take you somewhere. And so just investing your emotions and time into different energies, into different locations, I've learned to be a great aspect of meditation for me. If I'm feeling sad, I'll take myself to the nearest body of water just to hear the waves, just to hear the water. If I'm feeling angry or distressed, I'm going to take myself out to somewhere where it's really cold. So that way I can feel cold. I can feel something that's not anger, but also I can be actively thinking about it. So, really, nature and my emotions, combining the two, it's just been a way for me to maybe add like a physical feeling to something that I'm feeling subconsciously. I'm not really there yet, 100%, but it's something that I'm proud of to be able to start working on.
I don't know if you'll ever be 100% there. I don't know if that's the goal, right?
Shoot, see, I hate that because I always sorry, not that I hate what you said. It's that
That's okay. You can
I
hate what I
I
said.
no. It's that I didn't catch myself saying that
Right.
because I am a firm believer that I'm never going to be perfect, nor do I want to be perfect.
Yeah.
Um, but there's still that bit of me that thinks
Hmm.
I have to be 100% and it's never going to go away. But I enjoy catching myself. It's just that you got there before me.
Yeah, I think like perfection would be so boring. If everybody in the world was perfect, the world would be just completely dull. It sounds like a lot of the work that you're doing is self-validation, really, at the end of the day, right? You're really just acknowledging like regardless of what I'm feeling, I'm allowed to feel this way. And I think it's funny that you haven't opened your DBT book because a lot of it comes down to the need to be able to validate your own emotions and not hide your emotions. Like I think many of us grew up in a circumstance where we were told to hide who we were and how we were feeling.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's still a struggle for me. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying that I don't struggle with it at all because there are some experiences that have genuinely like screwed me over.
Yeah.
Like I do have experience with sexual assault, and so trigger warning. I do have experience with sexual assault, and this was like 2 years ago. And 2 years later, I'm here questioning, was that my fault? Like
Yeah.
I don't think I was allowed to feel upset that this happened to me. Like it's still a work in progress of just me trying to validate the things that I feel. And from that experience, it turns into something that's questioning whether or not that happened or not for me. So it's just me trying to gaslight myself into thinking that I'm not deserving of good things and that the bad things that have happened to me was because of me.
Yeah. You
But
brought
that's
those
something that I've,
onto yourself. Kind of feels that way.
yeah. And, that's something that I'm still working on. But
Me too.
yeah, we all are, right? To an extent. But I think it's also a great thing for us to acknowledge it because it really shows that I think we're trying.
Hmm.
That's the best we can do is try.
Absolutely. Yeah. I struggle with that all the time. And I do think that it is very much related to the way that I was brought up. And it sounds like for you it likely was as well. Is your family in California?
So half of them are in Ohio, out of all places.
Okay.
But I don't know them. I'm not close with them.
Yeah.
It's the other side that I'm relatively close with, except they're all like they're not close at all. There's some people in Vegas, there's some people in Utah, there's some people in Mexico. We're all over the place just because we don't really like each other, and
Yeah, that happens.
yeah, yeah, our paths ended up differently.
Yeah. So, do you have any siblings?
I have a younger sister.
And do you have any relationship with her?
No, and that's I think my fault. um,
Hmm.
I probably should establish a relationship with her because you know she, she's I can tell that she's kind of lost right now,
Hmm.
and so instead of me thinking that oh, I'm not going to be there for her because no one was there for me. I can
Right.
see that as a very toxic kind of thought. So it's one of those things where it's like I have to man up and maybe I should offer her the support that I didn't have. But I don't know, it's whatever
You know
happens.
what? You said earlier that you realized when it came to your family that if they weren't like beneficial in your I don't know the exact words that you said, but something along the lines of like if they weren't beneficial in your life, then like maybe now wasn't the time to have a relationship with them because you needed to focus on yourself. And I wish I figured that out at 21 because I'm 31 and I have been better at practicing that for the last like 4 years, but it took a long time. And sometimes like you need to put yourself first and your own healing is more important than somebody else's. I'm not saying don't have a relationship with your sister, don't get me wrong.
No, you're
but like but you know the fact that you recognize that this early in your journey is really awesome.
it's recognizing a lot of things about myself that really just catch me off guard, like recognizing that I am the way that I am is so hard because it makes me feel a lot of different things. And then it's that swamp of emotions that sent me to the hospital, right? And so I'm just really trying to be careful with how much it's like opening a third eye, like
Mm-hmm.
it takes in so much at once, but it's learning to regulate those emotions, something that I still struggle with too is, I mean, what do I do? They're like Legos, like with no instructions. What do I do with it? Like what do I build? It can either be like the most horrendous looking Lego set you've ever seen, or it can be something really odd and interesting. But we're all human, so it's just a matter of what we decide to do with what we learn, I guess.
Yeah, and just being open to learning it, right?
Yeah,
You're studying psychology and political science, right?
I am.
Do you know what you want to be when you grow up? Like why are you studying those two things?
Well, I've been involved in political advocacy ever since I was little. So I've always been involved with the community. I've always been doing community service, and then community service led to actually serving my district back home, my high school district back home. Um, and then I got engaged with student government in college. We've been doing a bunch of lobbying trips. I had some experience working in legislation, and then I ended up here in DC. Where I interact with members of Congress and really get to represent people back home. That's just something that I've always kind of known. One thing that I told myself in regards to education is that I want to do something where I'm able to help other people. And so that started off with politics. But I also like psychology. You know, I also like thinking about why we are the way that we are as humans, why we act the way that we do as humans.
That
And
is so
so,
intertwined with politics in every way.
yes, and I often call my two majors like the manipulator majors because you can learn like a lot of good manipulation tactics with two of them combined because
Right.
it's all just like getting around to different people and like just really getting people to do what you want them to do at times. Um,
Manipulation or getting like improving the world, right? I mean, depending on what you're lobbying for, it
which takes some manipulation at times, or
yeah,
manipulation, let's change that word. It takes
you
some
got to play the system.
convincing. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to
See,
learn how to get what you need.
yeah. And that's the thing. Not a lot of people have what they need.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's me studying in these two fields is me trying to learn about ways in which I can help people get what they need. And so in the psychological aspect, I'd really like to be maybe a therapist, something that I was telling my mentor was that I'd like to work as a therapist, but for incarcerated individuals,
Mm.
because I feel like with them, I wouldn't have to bullshit them.
Yeah,
With
you can't
therapists,
bullshit them.
no,
They'll
yeah,
see
that's the
right through it.
thing.
Yeah.
Right. And see, with younger individuals, or I guess everyone really, finding a therapist, a lot of them bullshit. Sometimes they don't bullshit, they sugarcoat things, you
Mm.
know, and I find that very frustrating. And when I look in a counselor is someone who's going to call me out in the middle of a conversation. I love when I'm just ranting about something that I think that I'm doing right or that I'm feeling, and they stop me and they call me out on my stuff. They say like, I don't think that's the right thing to do because I'm so caught up in what I feel like I'm doing is right. And that also reminds me of something that I learned along the way is opposite action.
Yeah. There you go.
So
You know your DBT.
yeah, see, there's some. It's just like doing or not doing what I feel is right. Is that what it is?
Opposite action, I'm not the best at explaining it, but like if you have an urge to do something that in the grand scheme of things isn't going to help you feel better or help your life or be effective, then you
Okay.
should do the opposite of that. So
Yeah,
like,
that sounds about right.
if you're like all I want to do is nap, but like realistically the more I nap, the more depressed I feel, maybe I should go for a walk. Going for a walk is opposite action. That's a very
Yeah.
small component of it, but yeah.
No, yeah, that makes sense. And I see that throughout all of my life because one thing that I'll try to do is fight certain urges to do a certain thing that I know are going to get me nowhere, but I just do it anyway because that's all I know. But anyway, it's just back to education stuff, and I really realistically have no idea what I want to do.
Yeah, fair. Me
But
neither.
I I just know I want to help people.
Yeah.
But first I need to help myself before I can help others.
Totally. And the beautiful thing about having strong emotions, regardless of how you identify, is that you're probably crazy passionate about the stuff that you're really into.
Yeah,
And that like we are unstoppable. So, you can just keep on going and like you will get there and you'll find the thing that you're really motivated to do. Like I'd be curious like what kind of lobbying are you doing? Like what brings you like that drive to help other people?
I think it's really just a sense of community.
Mm,
And I say that because a lot of the work that I've done, it requires community. And that's something that I've lacked my whole life because I've always been
yeah.
on my own. And I mean, support, financial and keeping a roof over my head. Shout out to my mother.
Yeah.
But in
Like
terms of
emotional
it,
community
yeah,
connection. Yeah.
connection, yeah, in terms of just finding myself and in terms of
Mm-hmm.
just feeling good in myself, I just really want to be a part of a community. And a lot of that community you can find through common interests and goals. And what was easiest for me at the time was to engage in communities that really wanted to act on what they were lacking. And some examples at the time were clarifications on Title IX proceedings. Another
What does that
example.
mean?
So I think it's like a California thing.
I'm
Um,
also in Canada for the record.
yeah,
So
right. That's why I said like I think it's a California thing. Um, Title IX is like a whole like article on regulations and legal proceedings of how to navigate sexual offenses.
mm,
And so there's a good legal system that's set up to support individuals who have experienced that, but there's no clear communication on how to access that, how to access
mm,
those resources. And so something that we did back in my high school was advocate for ways in which we can get these resources to students because unfortunately students are also individuals who experience something like this. um, that's one thing. I've been advocating for things like the farm bill. Those are for protections for individuals working our farm fields. And me being Mexican, that's a big part
right.
of our culture because a lot of Mexican individuals, we have family members who have experience working in the fields and who have just hard experience in labor.
Yeah.
And so just
And like
protecting their
keep our
rights
world running,
to
literally.
keep food at the table. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we wouldn't have Thanksgiving or Christmas dinners without efforts led by them. Right. Um, and so just protecting them. And I've been really honing into LGBT advocacy. I identify as queer, well, specifically, I identify as demisexual. Um,
Mm,
so, really, just fostering community in ways in which we have something in common has been something that I've really been investing in.
amazing. The world is so lucky to have people like you who are, fighting for what's right and just, started in early high school, it sounds like, doing all of this work. So you're going to
It gets
do
tiring.
great things. Yeah. Oh, I have no doubt. I have no doubt. And it never
Yeah.
ends, right?
Yeah. And that's something I like to think about too is that things like stigma racism, homophobia, trauma. Those are things that are always going to exist, but they're only going to be such detrimental parts of our lives unless we have someone or groups of people who are actively working to combat it, because if we just let these things go uncombated, then it's over, like that's what we're known for, that's all we're surrounded by. But today we're lucky enough to have people who are actively fighting against these things, and so that just shows that there's some hope and that there's some opportunities for people to really be able to live their lives in a fully flourished manner. And so I guess that's what I'm trying to do for the community at large, but also that's something I'm trying to do for myself. I'm trying to fight for myself. I'm trying to set boundaries, I'm trying to find ways in which I can find love, in which I can love myself, which is something I've always struggled with. So it's a big, complex circle of different activities and actions.
We all end up in the work. I mean, I think that we like there's always a path that brought us there. Do you know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
have a psychology degree too. There's a reason that I was getting a psychology degree when I was your age, probably because I was desperately trying to find myself and figure out what was wrong with me. And, it does all kind of come full circle in the end. A lot of the time, okay, so I guess in California, I don't know how bad racism would be in California, but
It's
because
bad.
it's like, is it bad? Okay. I'm curious, because I know there's so much conversation that comes up in a lot of these podcast episodes and just conversations I have with anyone about younger years bullying really affecting how we act as adults. Does that resonate with you at all?
So I have a story for you.
Mm-hmm.
I was the bully.
Ooh,
And
interesting. Okay.
yeah, so I was the bully. I was the one always kind of physically pushing people and engaging in just some like really harsh like play. And this is in like elementary and yeah, it started in elementary and it never went beyond that. um,
It's
I
okay if
was
it
the
did.
one.
I used to beat the shit out of my family. Like it's just the reality of the world.
Okay, well, now they said that I feel like I'm an asshole at times, but that's just me.
Right,
Um,
yeah, me too.
but yeah, I can generally be a little bit of an asshole, but that's just because I'm not having the best of days. But anyway, um, I was the bully, and I was the one being called into the office, being like interrogated by whoever I was bullied, parents, like saying like I'm such a bad kid or whatever, always getting in trouble. But before that, though, I was the one who was made fun of. I actually had a whole group of kindergarten students run away from me for no reason. I was like, guys, I just want to play, like I'm just
Right.
like a baby. So what are you doing?
And not knowing like why they're doing that, yeah, would be
Yeah,
very weird.
no, yeah. And then went into the bullying, and then it kind of just went back into being bullied by parents, family, um, people at school too. There was a whole rumor about me in high school, like just back talk in regards to my sexuality. And at the time, I wasn't out. I was very much closeted. I was very insecure about what my sexual identity meant. But it's like, oh, well, he's gay. Like, oh, he's like hyper feminine or whatever. Um, and so it was just navigating all of that toxicity. And in terms of how I grew with that, it just made me really insecure. And it made me very, what's the word? It just made me very uncomfortable around people. And right now, I'm very uncomfortable around people. Like, I just get so drained easily. And I just get so all up in my head about the intentions of people. Like I never know what people's intentions are. And so I overthink that. It's really like a question of whether or not I should trust these people that I have around me. And so that kind of threw me, that experience growing up, it kind of just threw me into a loop on both ends, being the bully and kind of the at the other end of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess you can say it's what I deserve, I guess. I don't
No,
know.
I don't think so. I think everybody we're all trying to just like cope, right? So, if you're lashing out at people, that's for a reason, right? Like, it's not a good thing, don't get me wrong. I'm not happy about any of the lashing out that I did either, but you're doing it for a reason, right? Like, you're never just, I don't think anybody's like an inherent, maybe there are inherently evil people in the world, but I feel like even them, something probably happened to them that made them that way.
That was the thought that led me to study psychology because I have been surrounded by people who just don't seem like the kindest or most like good. They just don't seem like that good of a person to me. But I put a thinking cap on and I thought, well, that doesn't mean they're bad people because I doubt their intentions were to do what they did to me, right?
Right.
I'm just thinking about what is it about their past that led them to act in such interesting manners. And so my personal thought is no one's really a bad person unless your intention is to genuinely hurt people. And my intention isn't to hurt people, at least, but I'm open to the idea that throughout my life I'm going to hurt people, not by not
Evilness.
on purpose. Yeah,
Yeah,
like not
exactly.
out of some spite. It's just going to happen, and people are going to hurt me, and it might or may not be their intention, but it's going to come regardless, and that's just what life is. It's just letting things happen. Well, let's change that up a bit. It's just allowing emotions to flow through you and then working with them and then seeing how they take you throughout life, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and trying to always be improving yourself and your reactions to things, right?
I'm very curious. I'm very interested in having a conversation about attachment.
Ooh, okay, hit me.
Attachment. So, or let me simmer it down a little bit. The idea of limerence.
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 I've
Yeah.
never even heard that word before.
Limerence. So from what I understand, it's we'll see now I'm tripping out too because I'm forgetting what it means. But
It's
I
okay, I
feel
can
like
Google
I
it. Limerence is a state of mind where a person is consumed by an intense, uncontrollable desire for another person. It can involve intrusive thoughts, a desire for reciprocation, and a longing to form relationship with a person of interest. Limerence can be intense and overwhelming and often exhilarating and agonizing. This definitely sounds like something that could be a BPD related thing I've never heard of. Interesting.
so it's not that exact definition that
Okay.
it's certain aspects of that that really allow me to think about the broader aspect of it because there's
Mm,
aspects such as like being so obsessed with something or someone and it just makes me think about people's relationships with other people, specifically those who identify with the symptoms of BPD, you know,
mm,
how we interact with these people. I have been in a long-term relationship and that ended because I felt like I impulsively broke up with that person
right.
because I thought a relationship was supposed to be 100% perfect. I thought it was supposed to be
Uh,
sunshine and rainbows because that's not something that I'm used to. And so I thought that's
yeah.
what it was supposed to be like because I'm used to so much of the opposite of that, like being
Right.
abused. I'm so used to being taken advantage of. And so when I had like a somewhat healthy relationship, I got scared because it was going so well. I was like,
Uh,
why are you like telling me you love me?
right.
Like
And then you're
what's
like wondering
what's
like what's the motive behind this? Because you said that earlier about you're always questioning what people's motives are.
because that's what I grew up doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we weren't perfect by any circumstance,
Nobody is.
like you're right, right. Like he was an overthinker, I was an overthinker, and so when you pair the two, it's just a very interesting situation. But we kept getting in arguments, and after one simple argument, I broke up with this person, and then I thought, thank God, like no more of that. And then
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks later, I'm calling the crisis line because I'm about to like I'm having like the most mental like worst mental breakdown of my life because I feel so lonely. But then I'm like, wait a minute, I broke up with this person. I That's me. Like that's what am I doing?
The BPD tagline is "I hate you. Please don't leave me." You are
That's what.
not. You are not alone in this, right? Like
Yeah.
you're like I'm gonna. I think to me at least where this comes to is like this feeling of either things are going so well, so I'm going to like preemptively dump you so that I'm the one that's dumping you, or feeling like this is going too well. Am I going to lose control over how I feel? Therefore, I'm going to dump
Yeah.
you. That, in my experience, those are kind of the two things. Neither of them are healthy or like helpful, but those are the experiences that I've had with it.
Yeah, and now I'm so giddy because this is like the first time that someone's like actually like understood that. Because when I try
Mm,
to like explain that to other people, they think I'm insane. And I'm like, guys, I'm just please, I'm not insane. I promise. I am a super feeler.
yeah,
Like
100%.
like I just feel very deeply. And so going back to relationships, it was so interesting to me because it's all about the idea of control. It's like I really want to control how I'm feeling, but I also don't want to
Yep.
lose that autonomy over myself while I'm with this person. And so, like, just thoughts of that coming into my mind, I was thinking, like, after another argument, I got to break up with this person.
Mm-hmm.
But then it was when I broke up with this person that I realized, like, it wasn't that big of a deal. Like, all we needed to do was just take a breather, have a conversation, and
And
then
talk it out.
talk it out, and recognize that it's arguments that foster healthy relationships.
Mm-hmm.
But because I'm so unfamiliar with healthy relationships, I thought
Yeah,
it's all or nothing, black and white. It's over.
hundred percent.
You piss me off, so I'm gonna break up with you, even though you are the love of my life. Like it doesn't matter. Just you have to leave.
Yeah, it's a hard one. I like truly. I mean, I've been with my husband for like 8 years, and when he first asked me out, I said no, and was like, "No, you're too nice of a person. I can't be with you." And it took me a month of my friends like yelling at me before I actually gave him a chance because of that reason. I was like, "This is too healthy. I'm not used to this. I'm used to chaos. I'm used to like fighting all the time. I'm used to all this stuff. You're, I, this isn't going to work, right? Like it's not good." Meanwhile, it works great, but it took me a long time to kind of get over myself and get over my black and white thinking
Yeah,
around this can't be, I don't deserve this was almost part of it too. Like I don't deserve somebody so good. Because if you've just been told you're bad your whole life, why would you think that you deserve good? I don't know. There's so many complex layers to it, right? Um, when did this happen? This breakup?
the breakup. Actually, last year in July, so not too long ago.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I've been putting myself out there in the dating scene. Just really trying to. I call myself a love junkie, and that's not
Mm,
necessarily the healthiest term that
mm-hmm.
could be used because I feel like I need to be in love with someone just to feel something. Like I need other people to validate my existence because I have trouble validating my own existence, right? And so I just need to obsess over someone or else I have nothing to live for. Um, so it's just
And
really been
sometimes obsessing,
impulsively.
like I sometimes obsessing over someone feels really good. Like it's exciting and you're like, "Ooh, this is fun." And then it can turn the opposite where it feels
Yeah,
really really bad. Yeah.
and that's where the idea of limerence comes in because I often get so attracted to people if I like with the bare minimum, like if they showed me any form of decency, you're my crush for like the next day,
Mhm.
and the wounded part of me just really likes that, but I'm acknowledging that that's not really healthy.
Mm.
So it's a
The
very
wounded
interesting
part of you.
dynamic.
I love that phrase. The wounded part of you.
Yeah, and thing about that part of me, it's never going to go away. Like that's what I mentioned earlier in the beginning, is just working with your demons. Like there is a very strong demon inside of me, but he's not that bad.
Mhm.
Like he's a very chill guy. It's just he has his days every now and then, and so it's just being able to have a conversation of that other side of me, and then work around some quirks that I'm not really fond with, and
Yeah.
seeing where we can go from there.
And totally. And like I think sometimes we've got to like have those shitty experiences to find ourselves and find what we do deserve and need, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, this comes up in super feelers, like the super feelers club a lot is like the peer support is just these obsession relationships, and then they like automatic, like, I just want to get out of here, because so many people experience that all the time. And it's one of those things where, like, I feel like there's like DBT skills that are helpful for that situation, but not like really obvious ones. Like, I always find like they could do more for that situation. So yeah, it's not easy for sure.
Yeah. I guess you mentioned it. It was we have to go through these shitty experiences in order to, like find some good out of it. One of my biggest like kind of problems was thinking to myself, how many more shitty events do I have to go through in order for me to be at a good place? Something I still struggle with is defining what it means to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't know what it means to be happy. I've tried medication, but that actually did the complete opposite for me. Me feel
Mm.
nothing, no sadness, no
Interesting.
happiness, nothing. And so I'm currently, this isn't the best thing, but I am engaging in cold turkey.
Okay.
I acknowledge it's not the best thing that I could be doing right now, but I'm
Yeah.
bringing it down, like small doses by
Yeah.
doses.
We don't
I'm,
recommend doing med changes without your doctor, but
yes,
it
yeah. And
happens.
she knows, yeah. And she knows it's my intention to
Right.
eventually get off pills.
What meds are you on?
So I'm on Lexapro and I went from fluoxetine.
Okay, interesting. I don't know what that. Do you know what the brand name of that is? Sometimes
Oh,
they're different in Canada and the States too.
there's a bottle like right here. Let me see.
I'm gonna Google it too. Oh,
Escitalopram.
Lexapro. Okay, escitalopram. Okay, gotcha. I don't know if I've been on that. I don't think so. One of the few.
Yeah, there was a time where there was mood stabilizers too, but those did not
Right.
work either.
Yeah.
So one thing that I really wanted to do in terms of getting off of pills is just find ways in which I can naturally bring myself to find that dopamine and to find that
Mm-hmm.
serotonin. But it's been a challenge. But with time, I think I'll be able to get a little pick me up.
Yeah. And it's a good goal, right? Like, to be able to find things that bring you joy that aren't related to medication. I mean, not that medication and like the psych meds, antidepressants actually bring you joy per se. They most just like kind of take the edge off, I find. But
Mm.
um, yeah,
And not
it's
to say
always
that they don't. Sorry, and not to
go
say
ahead.
that they don't work either. Like
No, totally.
there
I
are,
need medication.
yeah, and I may need medication like a year or two. I don't know, but right
Mm-hmm.
now I'm just working on getting off them. And shout out to the people who, are thriving with them.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's something that not my thing.
Yeah, and like honestly, that's fine. They don't need to be something you take for the rest of your life, and they also don't need to be something that like you have to be on in this exact moment. You can figure out what you need, and sometimes like, I mean, oftentimes it takes a while to find the combination that you need if you do want meds, right? I mean, I've been on psych meds for like on and off for since I was like 12 and I'm 31. So
Mm,
like, oh God, that's terrifying. Almost, is that 20 years? Yeah, that's almost 20 years. Wow. That makes me feel old. But I still have med issues sometimes. I was ended up in treatment two months ago because, or I guess when this episode comes out, it'll be like 4 months ago because of a med change. It just happens,
mm,
right? Sometimes
yeah,
things go weird. That's
we're not
life.
perfect. Yeah.
No, we are not perfect. So, what do you love about being a super feeler?
One of the first thing that comes to mind is just acknowledging that I feel these things. You know, I feel like a lot of people often refuse to acknowledge the fact that we only live once and we are given this rare opportunity to feel emotions and to actually be able to take a step back and to recognize how these emotions impact you. To me is such a very like wild and such a fun experience because you really start to think like I really acted like that because I felt like this. Like that's pretty crazy. Like
Mm,
the way we act is like the way we are as humans is just so interesting. And that's something that I often tell people who I'm mad at or who upset me, and then I react out of like very impulsive ways. I follow up at the end by saying, well, you were very interesting. Like, you were very weird to, like lead me on, and then me tell you like that. Oh, well, that pissed me off. But you were so weird for that. Like, why would you do that? But like, why would you make me feel that way? Like,
Mm-hmm.
why is it I'm reacting that way? So I guess being a super feeler is just being able to acknowledge that I feel these things, and that's okay. I feel a lot of different emotions that I might not know what to do with them yet, but the fact that I feel them and the fact that I'm allowed to feel them, I feel like it's a very good opportunity for us as humans
Mm-hmm.
to
Absolutely.
work with them, but also just to let them guide you through
Mm-hmm.
your actions. And with every little action, you can really make a huge impact in your life.
Totally. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. It's been so fun getting to know you. And I can't wait to see all of the amazing work you do in the future. You're gonna do so much cool stuff. I have no doubt.
It's gonna happen one day. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but I'm going places, that's for sure. And until then, I will be working on myself. I will be working with others, and I will work on loving myself 1% better every single day.
I
And
love that so much.
I encourage everyone to do that too. Everyone needs to get in therapy. Like, please,
Mm-hmm.
just please, everyone go to therapy. It's really good for you.
Totally. Yeah, it's good for everyone. We all need to go, whether or not you have a mental illness or not. Yeah, it's so important. Thank you so much for listening to the Superfeeler podcast. This episode was recorded on the unceded traditional territory of the Matsqui and Sumas First Nations. If you are interested in learning more about the show, please feel free to follow us on social media. Our Instagram handle is the Superfeeler. That'll be also linked in the show notes. We also have a Patreon page where you can get all sorts of bonus content. We've got bonus episodes, video episodes, lots of resources, journal articles, all sorts of stuff. So you're going to absolutely love being on Patreon with us. There's also free memberships in addition to paid ones, so please feel free to join that. That's patreon.com/superfeeler. If you're looking for information regarding the Superfeelers Club, which is the peer support group that I mentioned in the show, please feel free to Google or look at laurieedmondson.com for information and registration.